I want to talk about a version of you that never gets acknowledged. Not in motivational content, not in the success stories people tell once everything has worked out, when the struggle has been cleaned up and turned into something that makes sense from a distance. Not even by the people closest to you. I'm not talking about the version that made it. I'm not talking about the version that stands on the other side with results and clarity. I'm talking about the version in the middle. The version that woke up on the day when nothing was working, when progress was invisible, when validation was absent, when every external signal was quietly suggesting that this wasn't going to work. And still, you got up. Not with confidence, not with certainty, not with motivation. You got up with nothing. With that specific kind of exhaustion that comes from continuing longer than continuing feels possible, and continuing anyway. That version of you is the most important version you have ever been. More important than the version that succeeded. More important than the version that gets recognized. Because that version made a choice. A quiet choice. A private choice. To continue. Without evidence, without reward, without any reason the world could confirm. And that choice is what everything else is built on.
Most people think the turning point in a life is dramatic. A breakthrough, a big moment, a clear decision that changes everything. But the real turning point? It's almost always quiet. It's a day that looks like every other day. A day that doesn't feel important while you're living it. A day that produces no visible sign that anything is changing. The real turning point is the day you kept going. When you had every reason not to. Not the day results showed up. Not the day effort was rewarded. The day effort continued without reward. Because that day separated your path from the path of everyone who stopped. And people stop. Not always loudly. Not always with a clear decision. Sometimes they just slow down. They rethink. They adjust. And eventually, the momentum disappears. But you didn't disappear. When it made sense to pause, you continued. And that matters more than you think. But here's the part most people struggle with. They look back at that version of themselves, and they don't call it strength. They call it stubbornness. They call it desperation. They call it delusion. Because it didn't feel strong in the moment. It felt uncertain. It felt heavy. It felt like moving forward without proof. So there's a voice that says, that wasn't strength. That was just you refusing to let go. That voice is wrong. Because that version of you wasn't ignoring reality. You were reading a different signal. An internal one. A signal that said, this isn't finished. Even when everything outside of you said it was. That isn't irrational. That is trust.
And that kind of trust is rare. Because most people rely on conditions. They show up when they're rewarded. They continue when progress is visible. They stay consistent when it feels justified. But when conditions turn, they stop. You didn't stop when conditions turned, which means you operate differently. And that difference is everything. It means your persistence isn't theoretical. It's proven. Proven in the exact moment that exposes whether it's real. When there is no reward, no validation, no confirmation, and still, you continued. That's not small. That's rare. And it changes what you're capable of. Because the person who knows they can continue without conditions has access to a level of consistency most people will never reach. And persistence, more than talent, more than luck, more than timing, persistence is what builds real things. You have that. Not because you said it, because you proved it. So here's what matters now. The version of you that kept going, that exhausted, uncertain, continuing anyway version, deserves to be acknowledged, not pitied, not softened, recognized as the most important version of yourself you have ever been. Because that version answered the only question that actually matters. Will you continue?